Chapter 1. Trickster's Mind, Hero's Heart. Few things can strike fear into the heart of a true warrior. What frightens them is a mark of what truly separates the novices from the experts. You ask a novice, and you'll hear them list off the names of a dozen or more notorious jonin or nuknin from various villages, and occasionally someone from their own village with an infamous temper. The likes of Uchiha Itachi and Momochi Zabuza are among the top listed, for obvious reasons. Behind them you'll occasionally hear Sasori of the Red Sands, and outside Konoha, you'll hear tales of Ataki Kakashi. Few of them ever list the acting Kage, of course, as they're essentially benched. Otherwise, they'd still be raving about the professor, Sarutobi Hiruzen. If you ask any of these novices why they're afraid of these ninja in particular, they'll either speak of their vast list of achievements or destructive capability. The experts are those that know why these ones are frightening and why there are others that could be far worse. Stealth, versatility, and misdirection. Every year, countless novice shinobi join the ranks expecting to get by on overpowered techniques and combat prowess. These are the ones that forget what shinobi are meant to be. Ninjutsu are powerful, but their versatility is far more important, and the greatest of ninja must be able to utilize it to the fullest of their capability, either by mastering and expanding a small range of all-purpose techniques or becoming adept at so many that your move pool is bottomless. What is most terrifying of these true masters is that some of them can go completely unnoticed, just waiting to untap that potential. An exploding tag under your feet, just waiting for a spark. The most fearsome are the ones that have yet to ignite and are given a chance to. Of course, this is a capacity that few ever develop and fewer ever maintain. What's rarest of all is those who are born with this capacity and carry it as a core aspect of their being. Usually, those few miracle children are easy to recognize, but for all the wrong reasons. Naruto, the hell did you do this time? Hiruzen rubs at the bridge of his nose with his wrinkled, arthritic fingers. Upon opening his eyes once more, he's almost blinded by the child's ear-to-ear grin. His spiky blonde hair and random patches of his face and black t-shirt are all stained by various colors of paint ranging from neon green and pink to his favorite kill me orange. The vast number of stains marring the visages of three of his favorite Umbu, now standing behind the boy, almost makes him crack a smile. Professional apathy be damned. The boy in question just chuckles as he tries to ease away from the assassin currently gripping the back of his shirt collar. Well, this paint cannon trap was supposed to be for that arrogant pricked Tsurugi on his way into work this morning. Hiruzen raises a brow and leans back in his chair. Tsurugi Kaneda, the grocer? Why exactly was he your target? Naruto grunts and drops a smile. He's been doubling his prices on me. Figured I'd pay him back by ruining a good set of clothes and making him miss a day's sales. Hiruzen makes a mental note to visit Mr. Tsurugi personally later. All right, and why exactly did you and these Umbu get caught in your trap? He scratches at the back of his head and averts his gaze. They caught me fleeing the scene of another prank I pulled on Jinbi Sensei at the academy that may have been a bit more dangerous than I thought. How would I suppose a no flower was that flammable? Well, that explains the small explosion at the academy earlier. Not much damage, just a little paperwork, and a teacher he intended to fire got burned. Hiruzen waves for Naruto to continue. Oh, all right. Well, they chase me a good distance, and I lead them all the way to my trap, which sadly wasn't triggered properly when Tsurugi team got to work. But I figured it'd slow these guys down, maybe blind him or something. But I had to trigger it myself to do that, so I got caught in the blast. Hiruzen nods faintly, turning to his crystal ball and gazing at the alley behind the grocers. The paint spatters on the opposite wall to the tampered dumpster turned into a hidden paint cannon provides a clear outline of the young ninja in training and the three umbu. And how exactly did you get the supplies to build something like this? Or even learn to build it to begin with? Naruto snorts and chuckles at his own ingenuity. You wouldn't believe what can be done with what most people throw away. Old paint cans or colors they don't want, old pipes, air tanks they think are empty leftover from old folks dying. And that's just the kind of stuff I use for just this prank. Though, he bites his lip faintly. Some of it may be stolen from stores that he kicked me out or overcharged me. Silence falls as Hiruzen lets the details sink in. A self-taught, mechanically wizened prankster capable enough to catch Umbu in one of his larger, more complex traps. If the paint had been poison, acid, or even just kunai, he had no doubt all of them would be dead right now. That kind of efficiency and the rarity of this gift cannot be squandered. Umbu, leave and clean yourselves up. I have to speak with Naruto for a bit, and your presence is unnecessary. The three masked figures behind Naruto nod and shunshin away. Hiruzen offers his adoptive grandson a smile and a wave to usher him over. Being but 11, he's all too eager to rush to the Hokage's side. Naruto, you have a very unique and rare talent among ninja. Not a bloodline like the Inuzuka or the Hyuga, but a personal skill that sets you among an even rarer and more valuable type of shinobi that I haven't seen a true prodigy of in years, and the last one wasn't even from this village. Naruto's sapphire eyes light up at the thought of how special he just might be. Really? But what? I I constantly fail in class. His smile fades away as he averts his gaze to the floor, lost in thoughts of his many failures. Sarutobi knows all too well that the scowl Naruto forces on hides tears. Arika Sensei is the only one that sees any potential in me, but he's never seen anything special about me. Well, this is a talent that most would have difficulty noticing that, and Irika may be a little distracted by having to help clean up the results of your pranks at school. Hiruzen chuckles at Naruto's undignified groan. But no, this talent is something truly rare. You, Naruto, are natural trap master. Your ability to devise traps and pranks from whatever materials you can find and turn them on the most careful of ninja in my ranks is incredible. Just think what would have happened if you designed that trap to harm and used it on a troop of bandits or an enemy shinobi. The light returns to Naruto's eyes as his potential sets in. You're brilliant, Naruto. Brilliant in a very uncommon way. What we need to do now is ensure you master this talent. Naruto leaps and cheers, throwing a fist to the ceiling in pure joy. Yes. Okay, how do we do this? A private training session? My own sensei? Oh, teach me a jutsu for trap masters. The Hokage snorts and bursts into a short bout of laughter. No, no, Naruto. I can't manage to provide quite that much. For one, Trap masters are rare and secretive. Next to no jutsu designed just for them have ever been recorded. Furthermore, I can't recall having one in this village right now. This is an undertaking you'll have to see through yourself. Naruto slumps in dismay. What I can do is provide access to some supplies to teach yourself more easily with. The first thing would be learning to trap animals by building your own traps from scratch. He turns around in his chair and rolls it across the room, digging into one of his bookshelves. Let's see. Yes, here it is. He pulls two books free and tosses them to his favorite blonde knucklehead. Basic physics and trap construction. If you can get through these and trap 10 animals of various sizes, then I'll provide the tools for your next step. Naruto fumbles as he catches the two books, nearly stumbling face first into the front of the desk. Once he catches himself and get a better look at them, he groans and almost drops them both. I have to read? Come on, can't you just teach me a jutsu? Hiruzen sighs as he rolls closer to the windows. Naruto, you say you one day want my seat and my hat. Do you realize how much reading that's going to require? How much smarter you'll have to be? He peeks over to Naruto to find him at full attention, despite the mild bewilderment on his face. The Hokage isn't just the strongest ninja in the village. We are also among the smartest, the most level-headed, the most trusted, and the most deserving. The only ninja in this village that can outthink me are the Nara, and they're too lazy to want the job. Few are quite as level as I am, save for the best of the Aburame. Whether one deserves, it is determined by the purity and meaning of their achievements. As for trusted, well, after all of your pranks thus far, what exactly have you done to gain the people's trust? He turns to stare out the window. You have a very long and difficult road ahead of you if you want to be Hokage Naruto. So the question now is, will you let a little reading get in the way of that goal? Or is it too daunting for you to want anymore? Silence falls for several moments as Hiruzen stares out the windows of his office and into the vast expanse of his village. Oh, how it's grown since his youth. His sensei would be proud, bless the Nidame's soul. He had succeeded in inspiring a once rambunctious young man into being the now second oldest Kage in history. Hiruzen could only hope he had not crushed this youth's dream with the reality of it. To his surprise, he hears the turning of pages behind him. Well, it doesn't look too hard. Not as hard as the tests in class, anyway. He turns his head up to meet Hiruzen's stern gaze with his own piercing eyes. I'll get back to my place and get right to work on these. I'll see you in a week. Naruto turns and bolts out the door, leaving a stunned and confused Kage in his wake. Wait, what was that about the academy test being harder? Should I look into that? Sarutobi turns to look back out the window, finding one of his most trusted former Umbu speaking to him from the roof. Of course, get Irika to assist you. I'm certain he's not involved, and he'll be eager to help nail the culprits. I shouldn't have to tell you to be discreet about it, but then again, he sighs and rubs his temples. Most of our ranks seem to have forgotten what stealth is. Only the Umbu and Jinjutsu users seem to have a grasp on it anymore. I suppose you're right. The silver-haired Jonin out the window closes his book and stashes it away. I'll be right on it, and I'll be sure to keep track of Naruto's progress for you while I'm at it. Hiruzen nods and turns away, knowing Kakashi's already gone by the time he opens his eyes again. They quickly fall upon the paintings of his predecessors and the lost successor. He's so much like you both. Your drive, your passion, your potential. I hope you're watching. He grins. Big things are in his future. I'm sure he'll make us all proud. Back in his ramshackle apartment, Naruto digs through the first few pages of his physics book to start off, with his trap-making book open to a diagram page off to the side. Huh. So that's where my diaper catapult prank went wrong. The pivot wasn't secured right and swung off to the side, and the force applied wasn't half as strong as I needed it to be. He turns the page and scribbles a few notes in a scroll to his left. And my paint cannon's trigger was the same, not enough tension on the tripwire. I was too focused on the ideas of one object just knocking into the next and interacting, not enough about how hard it hit. Outside his window, a clone sits on the wall with a smile on his face beneath a spandex mask. Not bad, kid. Might have to put in a request with the Hokage. He returns to his book for just a moment before smirking as it reads one of the most perverse lines in the book and dispels itself to send that memory to the original. If not for his mask, Kakashi would have had a nosebleed on the paperwork he was investigating at the academy. Few would ever guess that hiding reactions to his reading is one of the greatest advantages to his mask. A raccoon chitters and growls as it scrambles about in a makeshift cage of pipes, branches, and zip ties. The trigger mechanism was constructed from a few clothespins, some scavenged ninja wire, and sheet of sandpaper hidden beneath the fallen leaves. The sandpaper then doubled as a way to ensure the raccoon would stop scrambling and struggling after a few moments, when the leaves have been swept aside or ground down. Once it's clear the creature is caught, Naruto scrambles up to it with a wild grin. Yes, that's 3 squirrels, 2 raccoons, and an owl now. He takes a first sample as the raccoon attempts to escape, then lets it scamper off. Okay, now to go check my large target traps. He forces himself off his knee and to his feet, then bolts through the woods on the outskirts of the village. His hands are wrapped in a layer of bandages that covers all but his lightly cut and raw fingertips. Making some of these traps has been intensive, and paired with his physical training, he had to cover his hands to let them heal a bit. Fiddling with rope and ninja wire all day can be a literal pain. In the distance, Naruto could hear the honks and groans of an ensnared deer. Yes, he skids atop the grass until he stops only a few yards from a deer, now suspended in a net hanging from the branches. It doesn't seem to bother with struggling at all, just curled up in the bottom of the net, tangled around its antlers as it calls out. As he approaches, Naruto can't help but assess its lethargy. Huh, why the hell would it be this lazy caught in a net? Because it knows we're coming. Naruto jumps and nearly screams, wheeling around to see Shikamaru and Shikakanara. The clan head sighs as he steps up to cut the poor animal down. You should know better than to hunt deer on Nara clan property, Naruto. He chuckles nervously. Sorry, I didn't know this was clan property. One thing before you release it. He leaps up and past Shikaku, using a kunai to cut off a small patch of fur. Need to record my catches for Hokage Jiji. This is my 7th one. He laughs giddily as he pockets the fur. 3 more, and he'll start my next lesson. Shikamaru raises a brow and pulls his hands from his pockets to cross his arms. What's the Hokage teaching you to catch animals for? Oh, this is just to practice trap building and hiding. The goal is to get good enough at this to trap enemy ninja. Shikaku pauses as the pieces of the living puzzle that is Naruto start to fit together. I see. Well, try to keep off our property when doing so. Regardless, he looks over the net and the various small mechanisms used to trigger and pull it. This isn't half bad. I'd suggest securing your pulleys a bit more, but it's otherwise a solid trap. He cuts the deer down and lets it land with a thud, then assists it with removing the net from its antlers. I'd also suggest killing, skinning, and cooking anything you catch that you'd care to. Get better at making reusable traps and sell the furs, and you can make a pretty penny before you're even out of the academy. Naruto tilts his head as that sinks in. Huh, all right, I'll give that a shot. He spins his kunai and slips it back into his pouch. Shouldn't be too hard. I mean, he sighs. If I'm going to be a ninja, I'll have to get used to killing. Hunting should be good practice. He stretches for a moment and peeks around to get his bearings. Ugh, I think the next trap I gotta check is that way. He turns back to Shikamaru and grins. I'll see you in class tomorrow, Shika. He leaps off into the trees without waiting for a reply, leaving the two laziest of Naras watching his back. He's going to be amazing with those traps one day, isn't he? Shikamaru sighs. Troublesome blonde numbskull. Shikaka nods and turns to leave. He's more like his father than I thought. I'll have to discuss this with Kakashi and the Hokage. Maybe Hayashi. About a kilometer away, Naruto stumbles to a stop in a small grove where he set a small pitfall trap with a deep, smooth barrel buried and covered. With only smooth plastic surfaces, no animal can get a proper grip to climb back out. The sounds of scratching and scrambling within proves his point. Okay, what we have, he dash. Naruto stops as his sapphire eyes are met by the faded bronze of fox eyes. Not a word is spoken, but they plead to him and somehow seem to recognize him. He can feel them burrowing into his soul, but to empathize rather than harm. He stammers for a moment, trying to reason that he should start taking Shikaka's advice, but okay, fine. Come on, let's get you out of there. Chapter 2. Fledgling Beasts. Oijiji. Naruto barges into the Hokage's office with a bundle of plastic bags in hand. The Hokage barely manages to hide his book in time to avoid getting grilled by his adoptive grandson for being a pervert. And Naruto, how's your training been? I hope you haven't had too much trouble. The orange-clad brat grins as he sets out 10 bags with 10 different fur samples on his table. I actually caught more than that, but I pushed myself to catch 10 different species. Saratobi pauses for a moment, but sets his pipe down and leans in to inspect them all. That's not bad at all. You've completed this step far sooner than I expected. All right, now that you've learned to enclose and contain your targets. He reaches into his desk and pulls out a skull, opening it to unseal a series of kunai, shuriken, and sunbon. You need to kill your targets. Naruto crosses his arms. I killed and skinned a few of the ones I caught, but I guess you mean I should make the traps kill them, huh? The Kage nods. Of course, but you should put some subtle cues for ninja in the area to avoid them, so only animals fall prey to your designs. Naruto snorts as he recalls how one of his traps was tripped. Guessing Bushy Brow Sensei told you about Lee getting caught in one of them? Oh, I heard. He groans. That man's ranting is almost as obnoxious as the council's bickering. There's a damn good reason I insist he submit formally written reports of his missions rather than oral reports. Naruto nods and chuckles nervously, but then starts to cackle mischievously. Naruto, I swear to Cammy, if you pull any pranks involving recordings of his rants and those damnable green leotards, I'll put you in a pink one and tie you upside down from the main gate. That shuts him up rather quickly. S-Su, deadly traps? Shouldn't be too hard, but he pauses and stares down at the scroll. Can you teach me that? Sarutobi pauses and stares down at the scroll himself. To use sealing scrolls? He shakes his head. Using them is kind of obvious. Just pull some chakra and poof. He gives Hiruzen a smaller, more confident smile. No, I want to make them. Hiruzen's eyes widen as that hits him. For a moment, he can almost see the Yondame's spirit imposed behind the boy, with a hand on his shoulder. Soon, he too smiles and leans forwards. Sealing is a very complex art that very few have ever mastered. Just as few as trap masters. Are you sure you want to walk both paths? Naruto shrugs. Well, who's to say I'll master it? I just want to give it a shot and at least learn to make storage seals. He scratches his chin. There's just so much I could do with them as parts of my traps. Naruto, Hiruzen chuckles as he pulls a basic sealing guide and a small ink kit from his desk. That may be the best damn idea you've had since the Oryoke no Jutsu. Once Naruto leaves, Hiruzen leans back in his seat and stares at the ceiling. You're planning to take him as an apprentice now, aren't you? Yeah. An old white-haired sage in a red vest fades into view behind him, leaning against the wall. He doesn't use it often, but his transparency jutsu comes in handy occasionally. He's going to make a name for himself quickly. He'll need my protection soon enough. I had hoped we'd be able to protect him through anonymity a while longer, but he's growing too fast. Hiruzen turns his seat to face his old student. I suppose so, but the question now is whether to tell him about your relation. Jiraiya opens his mouth to answer, but chokes on the first sound and sighs, closing his eyes in shame. No, I don't deserve that title. Maybe I'll tell him someday, but not now. He pushes himself up from the wall and steps towards the windows. For now, I'll leave him to you and Kakashi. I need to leave again to look into my old teammate. Seems the snake's been digging around near Kusa. A snake in the grass. Go figure. Hiruzen hunches over at his desk and weaves his fingers together to lean into. Troublesome. See if you can find Kuma out there. He'll be hospitable and informative for certain. Be especially careful, though, that we're maybe planning to set IWA after us somehow. I'd much rather avoid having to deal with Inoki throwing a fit. I'm sure the fence sitter feels just the same about dealing with a certain old monkey throwing his shit. Jiraiya grins as he ducks a mug thrown at the back of his head, then turns transparent once more and leaps out the window. That Monday morning, Naruto wanders into class with his newest book open and repeatedly tripping and stumbling in the halls. With his nose nearly buried into it, He barely even notices all the weird looks we receives from fellow students on the way in his classroom and up to his seat. He even manages to trip on two of the steps on the way up. Ino whispers over to Sakura. What's up with Naruto? I've never seen him read this much. Hell, I don't think I've ever seen him read. I don't know. Sakura raises an eyebrow. Is that a book on sealing? Why would he even be interested in that? Shikamaru just smirks at the back of the room and keeps his silence. They'll learn eventually. Sasuke doesn't even bother trying to consider whatever Naruto is up to for more than a few seconds. It's perplexing, but not worth his time. Hinata, of course, is taking in every detail of the young blonde's expression as he passes. She's never seen him so focused or bold, and it's rather intimidating, but still manages to make her heart skip a beat. Irika is just as attentive as Hinata, but obviously for very different reasons. He's known Naruto for years now, and slowly come to see him as a little brother. He knew Naruto was training to use his traps more effectively, but he never could have predicted him taking it so seriously. It's an entirely new and chilling side of Naruto that reminds him all too much of his childhood idol, Minato Namikaze. But the oddest thing is that Naruto has never expressed his brilliance or calm demeanor. But then there was all the evidence that popped up last week. Irika clears his throat to gain the class's attention. I regret to inform you all that Mizuki-sensei has been relieved from duty and will not be returning to us. There's also a few other staff members that have left with him, so things may be a little hectic around here for a while. Potential new teachers are being considered and should be arriving over the next month, along with a new curriculum we'll be experimenting with for the remainder of the year. Expect some significant changes, but don't worry too much about them. This is like a watered-down part of what it means to be a shinobi. We have to be able to adapt to whatever situation is presented to us, and he pauses and stares up at Naruto, who's still got his nose buried 10 miles deep into his book. Naruto, could you please put the book away? All eyes fall upon the blonde as he continues to read. Naruto, Irika's eye starts to twitch, and finally, he resorts to his infamous big head jutsu. Damn it, Naruto, close the book. Naruto nearly leaps from his seat. Sorry, Irika-sensei. I was in the middle of a pretty big C chapter. He sighs and shakes himself out of shock before setting a bookmark at his page and setting the book away. I'll have it put away in just a second. He pulls a scroll from his pocket and uses the ink and brush provided at his desk to start writing up a simple storage seal. Everyone present watches in fascination as he completes the seal and stores his book away in a puff of smoke. Irika's mouth falls open as he steps up to take a closer look at it. This seal, how did you get this good at making a storage seal so fast? Well, my handwriting was already kind of perfect, so that helped. Remember when I spent a month practicing my signature for when I become Hokage? Silence falls throughout the room as the bizarre fusion of sense and absurdity in that statement sets in. It takes several moments for Irika to manage to ask Naruto another question. And, why are you so focused on this then? You never pay this much attention in class. Naruto chuckles and scratches at the back of his head. Well, Hokage gave me that book so I could learn to mix seals into my traps. At first, I had a little difficulty understanding it, but there were some notes in there by the previous owner that really simplified things. Apparently, they wanted to write a better book on it, but I guess they never got the chance to. Seems they thought whoever wrote this one was, in their words, an obtuse dunderfuck. Irika stammers incredulously before pulling the book from the scroll and opening it to take a look. Lo and behold, the book is full of notes in the margins and some sections that seem to just be covered in whiteout and written over. Worst of all, he recognizes that handwriting. It was on many of his paychecks in his earliest days as a shinobi over 12 years ago. He slowly closes the book and seals it away once more, handing the book back to his favorite student. Okay, then. He stumbles down the steps and back to his seat. Well, class, how about, while the curriculum is being redesigned and our next steps are uncertain, we cover some more recent history. He returns to his seat with a smile. Today, we'll be discussing Namikaze Minato, our Yondaime Hokage. Later that afternoon, once Naruto had gotten out of class, he wanders towards the woods on the outskirts of the village once more to seek out his latest traps and whether he'd succeeded with any kills. On the way, he receives the usual slew of glares and mutterings of Demon and Foxbrat. As usual, he does his best to ignore them and focus on his own goals. That's been getting a little easier to do with so much to focus on lately, but it's also getting easier for him to reason as to why they call him such things. Little did Irika know, Naruto did pay attention in that lesson today, and a few things stood out to him right away. First of all, was that Minato was a seal master of the highest caliber. That got him kind of excited about his new career path, considering how much more like his idol it would make him. Second was that the QB was killed and Minato died on his birthday. Of course, there's also the use of foxes as nature's tricksters, a myth he always felt he could relate to and lived up to as well. Ever since the QB's attack, foxes have been hated here and often hunted by drunks and vengeful veteran shinobi. Having seen the results a few times when hiding from some of those drunks himself, he just couldn't bring himself to harm the fox he caught last week. Speaking of which, Naruto slows to a stop and sighs soon after passing through the tree line and out of sight. Peeking back, he finds that very same fox tailing him and now tilting her head as she stares him down. You're playing a dangerous game by getting so close to town around me, Yoko. He turns and kneels, reaching out as the fox kit scrambles up to him, shaking and wagging like an overexcited puppy as she nuzzles up to his hand. Settle down, girl. Come on. Gotta go check my work. He stands and waves for her to follow, which she gladly does, nipping at his heels as they go. Yeah, come on, don't do that. He chuckles softly. It doesn't really hurt. It's just a bit startling at first. She's too cute to yell at anyway. Eventually, Naruto stops by one of his kunai traps and sighs as he sees his target got away. The tripwire was triggered, but his firing mechanism wasn't quite strong or accurate enough. The kunai are scattered about in far too wide a range. Two of them seem to be missing, though, and a trail of blood leads further north. He sighs and pushes himself back to his feet after inspecting the scene, waving for Yoko to follow as he tracks whatever he hit. According to the fur left behind, his best guess was a raccoon. 30 yards north, as predicted, he finds the little trash panda lying dead against a tree. Unpredictably, though, he finds Lee kneeling over it with Guy consoling him. He chuckles nervously as the spandex-clad duo raises their eyes to meet him. Sorry, Lee. I kind of moved up to testing lethal traps. He crosses his arms and inspects the body from afar. Really got to work on the accuracy and firing speed, though. I wanted a quick, clean kill. Guy looks between Naruto and the raccoon for a moment before nodding in agreement. Tragic as its death is, Lee, it's a necessary stage in Naruto's training, and I'm sure he'll make good use of this one. His death will not be in vain. He sighs and rubs his student's back before returning his gaze to Naruto. As for a quicker kill, that's a good assessment. This body is still warm, but the blood trail is mostly dried. If this were an enemy shinobi, they would have had plenty of time to escape and recuperate. If they had a decently trained medic on hand, it would have been little more than an inconvenience. And that's if it even hit them. Naruto nods and kneels down to collect the corpse, sealing it into one of the compartments of a scroll in his left pocket. So, how's your training going, Lee? Lee lets off a few final sobs and blows his nose for a moment as he calms down. It's slow but working. I'm now able to run faster than Tintin can throw her kunai. Niji, on the other hand, seems to have much better reflexes still. He growls and clenches his fists. I need to catch up to him. I need to learn faster. Well, Naruto takes a seat and crosses his arms. What are you doing between all your exercises and drills? Huh? Lee tilts his head. That's just to eat and sleep and bathroom breaks. Naruto blanches at that. Okay, for one, that kind of training schedule is inhuman. Second, he sighs and shakes himself out of his daze. If that's the case, then Niji already knows everything you're training to do. Lee pauses as that sets in, but groans and covers his face. Of course. How could I be so stupid? Naruto shrugs. I have no clue. Ask the Umbu that can't find me half the time. Irika-sensei's better at finding me. Seems ninja have been forgetting what stealth means. He ignores the twitch in Guy's eye as his gaze falls towards the orange jumpsuit. Anyway, if you want to go leg up on Niji, you gotta train in something else. Something really personal that he'll have a lot of trouble dealing with. That may be difficult. Guy stands and paces, scratching the back of his head. Lee's physically incapable of actively using chakra in anything more than minuscule amounts for such things as wall walking, and even that took an incredible amount of time for him to learn. So anything that isn't taijutsu is out of the question. Huh. Naruto reaches into his pockets and withdraws a scroll, then pulls a book on seals from that. What about passive chakra absorbing seals? They're used to detain criminals, but also used as components of gravity seals for training pretty often. I think I might be able to modify them onto just about any seal, really. So if you can't control your chakra, but have a good amount of it, then you should be able to pull off seal-based tricks as long as we use absorbing seals with them. Guy nods and pinches at his chiseled chin as options roll through his head. That just might work, but I'll really need to brush up on seals. I've only used a handful of really simple ones over the years, and I struggled to get them down. But Lee stands and arches his back, the flames of youth pouring from his eyes. I will not fail. I'll learn to make these seals myself, if I have to. Yes, Lee, your flames of youth will never be extinguished. Naruto chuckles nervously and nods. Giga drive, but try to keep it quiet. You don't want to tip everyone off your new moves. Best to have a few aces up your sleeve. Might want to pick up a weapon with a good reach, too. As he speaks, the impatient fox that had been hiding behind a tree nearby leaps out and into his lap. Yeah, Yoko has settled down. Guy leans down to get a look at the fox. You know this one? She seems wild to me. Yeah, Kinda. He sighs and gently pets the fox in his lap to calm her down. She was one of my first captures. I just couldn't bring myself to kill her. Ever since I showed her mercy that day, she's been sneaking around the outskirts of the woods, waiting for me to return every day. Guy's eyes narrow as he stares down the fox. Very smart for a wild one, but far too friendly to be malicious. I would suggest keeping her as a pet, but in Konoha, he sighs deeply. More likely to make both of you the town's biggest targets if anyone catches you. Naruto nods sadly as he scratches under her chin. Yeah, that. And she gets a bit noisy, and my apartment doesn't allow pets. I think I know a solution, if you're willing to take a risk. Naruto peeks up to Guy and raises a brow. You're pretty good at hinge no jutsu, right? Well, if you can keep her still and get her to comply, you might be able to wrap the both of you up into one hinge that looks just like you and carry her into town. But not just anywhere. Guy flashes his signature pearly grin. To the Inazuka clan, asked to speak with Sum, your classmate Kiba's mother. She's the clan head over there, and she may be willing to help you train her. If she can fight for herself, or better yet, outsmart and outrun most of those angry blowhards that want to hunt her, you should have no problems at all. That, and once you've graduated, she'll be registered as a living ninja tool and be legally safe. Naruto's eyes widen as the potential of it all sets in. Soon after, he grins wildly down to Yoko, who raises her head to look him in the eyes. What do you think, girl? Do you trust me to get you into town safely? She cannot reply, but the look in her eyes says it all. They almost glow. If not for his vantage point, Guy would have witnessed Naruto's eyes turning red for a moment. All right then, he stands and hefts her up into his arms, but rather than just carrying her, he tucks her into the front of his jacket and zips her in. You just rest up there, and we'll be to the Inazuka compound soon. With a quick hand sign and a puff of smoke, the fox head sticking out of his collar and added mass in the front of his jacket are nowhere to be seen. He peeks back up to the grinning man towering over him. Thanks for the tips. I'll let you know how it goes, and I'll tell Tim you said hi. He turns and bolts through the woods, headed back into town and towards the unmistakable Inazuka compound. The barking makes it far too easy to track down, and he snuck in to pull some of his best pranks often enough to have it memorized from all angles. For now, Yoko seems content to ride in his jacket, and not a peep is heard. Hiruzen smiles down upon his adoptive grandson through his crystal ball, then peeks over to the files on his desk. 10 staff members at the academy, detained. Mizuki's mugshot sits atop the pile. These are the moments I really love being Hokage. He turns his chair away and takes a puff from his pipe. Do me proud, boy. Me, your father, and the entire village. Chapter 3. The Alpha. The residential district surrounding the Inazuka compound is usually one of the most loved by new arrivals to the village and the occasional tourist. It may not be close to a very prestigious and rich clan like the Uchiha once were, or the Hyuga still are, but it has one thing they both lack: an abundance of friendly animals to keep things lively and comfortable. Every home in that area, apartments included, allows pets. A lot of them are free roaming, as the Inuzuka hounds keep them all in line and almost seem to pass on their value and loyalty to any others around them. Leashes are very uncommon here, and the only thing less common is cats. Occasionally, Tora will invade the area on a bleak day and raise hell until a Jonin can manage to fight his way through the horde of canines and collect the royal cat that many swear is a descendant of the Nibi. But there are, of course, other animals that are often frowned upon in that area. Parrots aren't too popular, partly due to rarity, partly due to how obnoxious they can get once they start imitating the speech patterns of the louder Inuzuka clan members. Most of all, though, is foxes. It's no surprise that after the fateful day of the Kyuubi's attack, the village has come to collectively hate the species. So, of course, Naruto was very careful to not draw on any attention as he made his way to the Inuzuka compound. He knew there'd be no way to hide Yoko from their keen sense of smell once he gets there, but he figured he could at least reason with Kiba and his mother to keep things from getting out of hand. For now, he's lucky enough for Yoko to nearly fall asleep in the front of his jacket on the way there. It takes all the discipline he has not to pet her and blow his cover. The front gates of the compound are wide open, inviting anyone to enter. The Inuzuka are one of the most hospitable clans in the village as well, always willing to welcome guests and treat them like family as long as they show the same respect for nature and loyalty they live by. Having done a little gardening in his window to spruce up his apartment, he's guessing his respect for nature is up to snuff. As for loyalty, just about everyone in the village knows of his declarations of being the next Hokage, regardless of whether they believe him or not. The moment he passes through the gates, Akamaru's already jumping at his shins and yapping away. Naruto stumbles for a moment, struggling to calm the overexcited pup without kneeling down and putting Yoko in danger. Hey, see, come on. It's just me. You saw me in class an hour ago. Yeah, but he smells something new about you. Kiba walks around the corner with his hands tucked into his hoodie pockets. You smell more like a fox than usual. Naruto raises a brow at that. More than usual? What's that supposed to mean? Better look into that later. Well, the reason for that is the same reason I'm here. Any chance I could talk to your mom? I have a few questions to ask her. Kiba raises a brow and tilts his head, cueing Akamaru to mimic his partner. What business do you have with her? Naruto sighs softly, unsure how to word this. Clan business, I suppose. Answers only she can provide. Please, Kiba, this is really important to me. Come on, I haven't asked you for anything since that exploding desk incident. Fine. Come on, she's Dash. Right here, both boys nearly jump out of their skin as Tsum speaks from overhead. What they look up to find is the Inuzuka clan head standing upside down on the branch of a tree that's grown over the compound's wall. She smirks and falls, landing on her left hand and vaulting to her feet. So what do you need, kid? My clan doesn't exactly do many favors, so this is kind of an odd move, even for you. Naruto gulps as he struggles to calm his nerves, and eventually, he sighs and lowers his head, canceling his hinge as he pulls Yoko from his jacket. Both Inuzukas stare blankly for varying reasons, but seem mildly alarmed and confused. I was hoping you could help me to train Yoko here and get her registered as something sorta like one of your hounds. So kneels down for a closer look at the fox kit as she yawns and looks the clan head right in the eyes. Her gaze is unwavering, not the slightest ounce of fear or malice of any kind to be found. They stare each other down until some smiles and stands. So, who suggested you come to me for this? Naruto cradles the orange cannon. Mato Guy sent me. Yoko, and I ran into him and Lee while I was checking on my latest traps. She rubs the back of her neck. Well, I'll have to thank Guy later. She crosses her arms and shifts into a more confident stance that many would find right at home if done by a certain snake mistress. We've been looking for ways to expand our clan's skill sets, and expanding into other, more specialized cannons would be the perfect way to do it. She reaches down and gently pets the young fox to reassure her. We won't be taking her from you. She's all yours, but training her would make for great practice to be ready to train foxes ourselves. Naruto's bewildered stare slowly grows into a face-consuming grin. Well, when do we start? The sooner we can get this rolling, the better. Some scratches her head for a moment and peeks back to her towering hound, looking into his one good eye. What do you think? Ready to start now? Kurama nods and steps closer. I'm honestly almost excited for it. I wonder if she'll be as good of a student as Akamaru's been. Naruto almost gapes at the sight of a talking dog, but manages to silence himself with a nervous gulp. I guess she's eyeing your care for now. He gently sets Yoko onto her paws, and she turns to face him with a tilted head. Sorry, girl. You'll have to stay here for a while. He crouches and pets her for a moment. But I'll be back to see you every day until I can take you home, okay? You're not going anywhere yet. Naruto peeks up to some. Your training starts now. First off is obedience training, and unless she's a prodigy, you're going to be here for a while. Kiba lies awake late into the night, staring at his ceiling as the last few days' events plague his mind. He couldn't help it. To an Inuzuka, especially the males, the pack hierarchy is undeniable, and to change positions within it is a life-changing event. His position as being just above dead last has been threatened. He's never been the best student, a slacker, rebellious, constantly fidgeting and complaining through class until the few parts he's ever cared about, the physical training and testing, finally rolls around. In those, he excels, but even then, he's outdone. Sasuke, Shino, and Hinata all have better aim. Chuji and Naruto are physically stronger. Sasuke and Shikamaru, on the rare occasion that he applies his talents, are more critical and calculative. Now, even Naruto's starting to improve in those, moving up from dead last and surely to at least the middle of the class. And where does that leave Kiba? Dead last, the omega of the pack, lowest of the low and nearly worthless in his own eyes. It took a while for him to realize what led Naruto to catch up so quickly. At first, it made no sense to him. He'd never shown such potential before, and now he's one of the most driven in the class, if not a bit off-kilter considering he's always too focused on his own studies to pay much attention to class content. What sealed it for him was the last 2 days. First was just how much he applied himself to training Yoko. Even Kiba had to admit She was one of the quickest students he'd ever seen in the compound. She was still shaky on communicating with the hounds, but improving fast. She could take orders like a seasoned ninkin, but had the wit to judge when an order was too dangerous or misdirecting. What she lacks is the strength and size of a ninkin, but that can be accounted for in however Naruto designs her personal techniques, and he seemed to already be considering it. Whenever he was on the Inuzuka compound, every moment was about Yoko. All of his training was dedicated entirely to her, for the sake of her future and safety. He found strength in having someone to fight with and for. But in every moment of downtime, Naruto was seated nearby, absent-mindedly feeding and petting her while his eyes and right hand were focused on blueprints for new traps or practicing his ceiling calligraphy. Even when he had to take a break from training Yoko, he was still entirely dedicated to one of his passions and talents. Not a moment was ever wasted. Kiba may not be the smartest, but it didn't take him long to realize that difference between himself and Naruto. He must apply himself more and stop wasting so much time on meaningless pursuits. He must find things that truly matter to him and focus every waking moment on them. Only then would he be able to catch up and not only take his place in the hierarchy back, but move beyond it and become the next alpha of the clan. But this particular night, that question takes a back seat as he listens in on a conversation between Akamaru, Ko, and Yoko. The kid has learned enough now to discuss things that instantly made him question his village, his friend, and even his beliefs. Just who and what is Naruto? Kyuubi incarnate or a living prison? Danzo-sama. We have news regarding the Jinchuriki. Danzo raises his head from his desk and stares down the root agent kneeling before him. He waves to gesture the young man to continue. Even fully clothed in umbu black spandex, gray vest, and painted mask, his high-pitched voice and stature betray his identity as one of Root's youngest agents. His training has taken a turn. He's begun to train as a trap master and is progressing at an alarming rate. Compounded with his newfound studies into Fuinjutsu, he'll become an invaluable asset to the village. There were contingencies in place for this potential route, but we were unprepared for the second development. He has taken in a young fox as his equivalent of a ninkin, and is training them as a joint effort with the Inazaka clan. Furthermore, we've recorded no less than 5 occasions thus far, in which he has gone into a trance-like state when making eye contact with the fox he now calls Yoko. The bandaged old warmonger closes his eyes and loses himself in calculations and predictions. Naruto's penchant for pranking always seemed like a suitable career starter as a trap master, something he hadn't seen in this village since his youth, and that one happened to die during the Second War, taking a surrounding troop from Kyumo out with him. Having a new one at their disposal would be invaluable. As for the fox, that may require twisting Jiraiya's arm. He may be tapping into the Kyuubi's power unconsciously, or this new fox is drawing it out of him somehow. The Biju have been known to congregate with their own kind when loose, and previous Jinchuriki have had affinities for species connected to their beasts. Han apparently has a bit of a thing for horses, and reports from Kyumo suggest an Yujito is a bit catty. For now, the fox is a wild card, but not one to be avoided. There's few times that a joker is a good card to hold on to, but Naruto has proven to turn odds in his favor frequently. But those odds must not be allowed to sit. His new preoccupations with the fox and his seals need to be urged in the right direction. Sarutobi may disagree, but the time for the truth is close at hand before he discovers his own seal or learns too much from this Yoko. Late into that Friday evening, after yet another long day of classes, training Yoko, and checking his traps in the dark, Naruto finally returns to his apartment and collapses face first into his bed. He groans into the tangled blanket and mumbles incoherently to himself. Not taking all this training so well, Naruto bolts upright and stares up to his window, finding a familiar Umbu mask staring back at him. The simplified dog mask shifts aside to unveil yet another mask and a single eye beneath a tall mess of silver hair. Konbanwa, Naruto. Been a while, hasn't it? Naruto stares for a moment, but sighs and sits up. Hi, Inu-san. Haven't seen you or Tora for a while now. The now ex-Umbu waves that accusation off and sets his Inu mask aside. We've been around. You haven't needed us to babysit you, so we've kept our distance and just ensured your safety. You've been progressing quite well lately on your own, though. Your traps are quite impressive. Naruto groans and flops back into his bed, then rolls over. Yeah, but with classes going on and needing to train Yoko, not to mention how much of a slave driver some is about that, I can't manage to keep working on my traps lately or my ceiling. I've got too much to work on at once. I need more hours in a day. Kakashi grins at that phrasing. Well, you're in luck. It's probably not the smartest thing to do, but, well, you don't exactly have a clan to teach you any jutsu, and most of your classmates know some sort of B-rank jutsu by now through them. So, how about I fill in that role for you? Naruto peeks up from his sheets with bewilderment in his eyes. How familiar are you with Bunshin no Jutsu? Naruto groans louder yet, holding his pillow to his face for a moment. Damn it, I can't do that jutsu. It's the only one form the academy that I haven't mastered enough to ditch Umbu with. Kakashi's sweat drops as he recalls the times his co-workers were stumped by the boy's evasive skills after particularly nasty pranks. Why, yes. Well, what about Kage Bunshin? It takes a lot more chakra, but considering how much you have, it should be easier for you to manage, and these clones are real. Silence falls for a moment until Naruto bolts upright. Real clones? Like physical flesh and blood clones that can act for me. Kakashi nods and makes a quick hand sign, producing a single clone beside him. Said clone then chucks his extra mask at Naruto, who barely manages to dodge it and leap off his bed to the left. They can only take one hit, though. Kakashi backhands his own clone in the face to dismiss it in a cloud of smoke. And when they die, you collect their memories. By the end of his explanation, Naruto was nearly drooling at the potential of this technique. He could practically see the gears turning in his head, almost literally. All his training as a trap master, learning to find multiple uses for everything, and his sealing experience teaching him to weave every stroke together, has made his mind a multifaceted mechanical marvel. Where he sees potential, he abuses it. And few techniques have the potential and versatility of the Kage Bunshin. The Naide made sure of that. When do we start? Now, if you don't mind working late. You don't have to meet with Sum until 2 anyway. Naruto rolls his eyes. Of course you know that. Well, I get along great with the Inuzuka. He reaches into his vest and pulls out a chain with the preserved hound teeth. I'm an honorary member. Just wait till you meet my summons. Training Ground 3 was a popular location. The proximity of the Kia monument provided both a numbing realism to training there, as well as passionate inspiration and motivation. Kakashi spent all too much time here, wallowing in suffering and depression that constantly bogs down his life. Naruto's presence here, on the other hand, helped him to finally feel a bit of that fire he had lost for so long. The fuel for that fire was provided by the young man with him, swearing up a storm between failed attempts at this jutsu. At this point, there was a constant thin veil of smoke around him after the number of failed clones he'd created and dispersed. Kami, damn it, why the hell is this jutsu so fucking hard? He punches the grass and forces himself back to his feet, stumbling as he gathers more chakra, struggling to tame it all into the proper form. Is it still too much chakra? Yeah, I keep killing normal Bunshin by overloading them. And I'm doing it again. He clenches his fists and grits his teeth, forcing the chakra to surround him. My control's never been good enough, and it's only getting worse. Why? He makes the hand sign. Why? His chakra flares up around him, forming a visible shroud of faded blue. Why? With one last guttural cry, he focuses on not one point to mold his chakra, but dozens, as many as he can envision around him. A smoky explosion rocks the training ground, and Kakashi raises his head from his favorite literature in shock. He'd never seen that much smoke produced by one jutsu outside of one peculiar jutsu designed entirely to make smoke screens and the occasional boss-size summon, which he'd only witnessed once or twice in his whole career. What he found upon the smoke clearing was a troop of nearly 100 Narutos, all looking to themselves and each other in awe. Some inspect themselves for their full range of sensations and physical details. Others leap about and cheer, but with the field so packed, some leap into one another and knock their heads together. As exhausted as Naruto was before making these clones, that little of an impact was enough to dispel them. Amidst them all, Naruto stands with a proud smile on his face and sweat on his brow, huffing and slouching as he takes in the fruit of his labor. But then, the final kick in the pants for the night. The clones are all struck with sparks of inexplicable pain at once, eyes turning red for split seconds before they pop. All of them popping at once floods Naruto's exhausted and addled mind with their memories and flashes of random and inexplicable imagery in the back of his head in time with the pain. Assaulted with all of these memories at once, he blacks out and collapses into a twitching heap in the grass, just before Kakashi can reach him. Deep within Naruto's sullen, cavernous mind, a set of titanic fangs and blackened lips form an almost sickening grin. Finally, it took far too long to find a way to drag you in here. Come to me, Naruto. We have much to discuss. Chapter 4. All ado about chakra. The main chamber of Naruto's mental sewer was far from difficult to find. All it took was following a nagging sensation in the back of his mind and recognizing that the pipes were merging and growing larger down certain paths. Wherever he was headed was the source of something. He didn't know what, but it was something big, something seeking an audience with him. Along the way, he came to find the many mechanisms he'd designed for his traps built into the walls, triggers to open gates to deeper compartments of his mind. A tripwire opens a gate of bamboo bars. A pressure plate triggers the fall of a solid iron wall. The final gate into the main chamber is triggered by pulling a lever that lets the contents of the smaller pipes, which he quickly identifies as his chakra, to flow through a pattern in the gate that he knows only as the spiral on the back of most Konoha-issued shinobi jackets. The moment his chakra reaches the center of the spiral from all angles, the door splits and retracts into the wall, unveiling the chamber beyond. The darkness is the first thing to catch his eye. This entire maze of pipes has been very dimly lit, growing darker as he goes. The room beyond appears endless, all light fading away towards the seemingly non-existent ceiling and leaving an infinite abyss to hang over his head. On what he can see of the walls, the pipes continue to grow and extend to the far end of the room until they sink into the walls on the opposite end of the room, just before a Titanic. Rusted prison gate, a single paper tag seal adheres to the middle of the gate, such a flimsy thing to hold it all together, but somehow it apparently works. It's only as he steps closer that he discovers a set of canid fangs scowling at him through the bars. A pair of crimson eyes opens above them, somehow lighting the inner chamber and unveiling the demon within. Naruto reels back for a moment, but glares through the bars as facts set in. The gears within his mind begin to whir and connect, quite literally, as he can hear the mechanisms of this internal space produce a constant clanging and knocking. The chamber is further illuminated from his side, as countless torches lining the walls are set ablaze, the flickering of freshly lit flames rising into the eternity hanging above. Images flicker across the walls between the flames as memories and facts are recalled and merged. His birthday, the day of the Kyuubi's attack. All the hatred he's known all his life. Mutterings of demon in the background. Most importantly, though, was the mention of Jinchuriki in his book on sealing. It jumped out at him right away as a prime example of the raw power and potential of sealing, as a method for the author to convince the reader to stick to their lessons. So you've been to me this whole time, huh? A rough, guttural laugh echoes through the chamber. Good. You aren't denying the grand truth in front of you. Humans are usually so arrogant to deny such facts. Naruto glares through the bars and sighs, closing his eyes as he allows his mind to calm what little it can. Do you know why nobody ever told me? The Kyuubi raises a brow and lays his head down across his folded paws. You know what a Jinchuriki is. You know how valuable you and I are to this village. You were an infant when I was sealed in you, a helpless little brat. If knowledge of what you were had gotten out, especially out of this village, you would have been a target within a few days, and we'd both be dead. Well, by now I would have regenerated somewhere, so I wouldn't have minded that. Naruto scratches the back of his head and begins to pace. Makes sense. I'll need to talk to Gigi for more details, I guess. He turns back towards the fox and looks them in the eyes. So why is it that I'm only meeting you now? Oh, that? Huh. He chuckles and leans in closer. I needed you to be pushed to chakra exhaustion so you would draw upon my chakra and allow us to meet. Although I was messing with your chakra control just a bit to push the issue. He taps at the bars with his claws. Now that you know I'm here, it shouldn't be too difficult to make your way back if you learn to meditate and detect my chakra. Ask the old monkey about that. He may be an obnoxious human, but he's one of the few who've earned my respect without getting to the top of my to-eat list. Naruto snorts at that and nods. I'll be sure to tell him that. For now, though, he pauses and stares down at the floor, willing one of the stone tiles to raise and give him a seat above the water. Once seated, he crosses his arms and starts to inspect the fox from afar. Why are you so willing to help me when my death would free you? Well, the fox grumbles and closes his eyes, debating on how to answer. You intrigue me. You aren't blaming me for the hate you've received. You aren't a clueless fool who jumps to conclusions. You actually have some promise as a warrior, and one day, maybe strong enough to keep up with my brethren and I. So, for now, I have no desire to see you die. For now, I'd much rather watch from within you and see just how far you can go. He slowly turns away from the bars to nap. Just be careful who you tell, of course. That cycloptic fool whose training you knows already. You're allowed to tell whoever you want, really. I'm your burden to bear. Just don't be stupid and tell someone who would kill you on the spot. That said, Naruto could only nod as the world around him slipped away. It felt so similar to losing consciousness, like being within his mindscape was just another form of it, and he was slipping back into the waking world. What he finds on the other side is that only a few seconds have passed, and Kakashi was in the middle of kneeling to pick Naruto up and carry him home. He bolts upright and stares into empty space for a few moments before lifting his shirt and glaring at the fading seal upon his stomach. Did you just kick me out of my own head? Oh, it's on furball. Next time I get in there, I'm interrogating you until your fur turns gray. Kakashi's only visible eye widens almost comically. Naruto, how do you know about the fox? I talked to him. Naruto stumbles to his feet, swaying for a few moments as chakra exhaustion continues to throw him for a loop. Ugh, why the hell did he have to be so rough with knocking me out? I would have preferred worse chakra exhaustion from another 2 hours of this over the headache of so many clones popping at once. Kakashi's eye narrows as he begins to analyze what he saw only seconds ago to him. I see. So your clones were in pain because of his chakra. It would make sense. Biju chakra is, according to some reports, paradoxically both toxic and healing. For a clone that cannot heal in a body unfamiliar with actively using that chakra, the toxicity would be the only effect, and they'd burst right away. That's how it works? Huh. Naruto takes out a notebook from his jacket pocket and writes a few things down. Would explain how fast I heal. I'll have to ask Gigi about how to build up an immunity, then. He sets his notes away and leans against a tree until his head stops spinning. Ugh, I should get back to my apartment and sleep finally. I shouldn't have trouble with making clones when the furry jackass isn't messing with my control, so I'm done training anyway. Kakashi nods and ruffles Naruto's hair as he passes. Should I report to the Hokage and tell him what you know, or would you like to approach him yourself? I'll do it myself. Naruto starts to stumble away, but Kakashi just barely manages to catch the soft smile on his face as he passes. Though his head hangs in exhaustion, Kakashi knows all too well that that is the face of a man all too proud of a hard day's work. Without a word, Kakashi disappears in a gust of swirling leaves. Though out of sight, he watches Naruto all the way to his apartment and only leaves once the blonde's snoring can be heard through his windows. Good morning, everyone. Irika jots down a few notes on the condition of his students this morning as he takes attendance. Some students are acting much the same as usual. Shikamaru is asleep at his desk and dead to the world. Chuji is in the middle of his second bag of chips for the day, and Shino is as impassive and statuesque as usual. There are some that catch his eye, though. For one, Kiba seems to have his nose in a book on hunting tactics. More interestingly, he recognizes is to be one written by a former Umbu captain who taught Kakashi how to manage his Ninken summons. Then there's Ino and Sakura. Their usual arguments and gossip have halted in favor of watching the two biggest class clowns and lowest ranked members of the class, as they both apply themselves so fervently that they seem to be entranced by their studies. Likewise, Sasuke's attentions have fallen upon them as well, rather than blocking everything out as he usually does in order to ignore the girls bickering over him. Kiba, he still doesn't care much about, but Naruto's developments interest him. Irika can only hope that helps the young Uchiha to stop thinking so much of his troubling past. He could use a rival. Hinata was usually enwrapped by the young blonde, but his recent actions gave her an excuse to gawk openly, and she appeared to be reveling in it. Her admiration for the boy was never in short supply, but now the pride in her eyes was almost intoxicating. Naruto had his nose buried into the final pages of his first book on sealing, frequently peeking back to the paper on his right to compare his newest seal to the text. As he places the last stroke, in his endless confidence, he slams his hand onto it and pumps the seal full of chakra. The wood beneath the tag creaks and sinks for just a moment. The tag proceeds to explode in his face, giving him a burnt right hand and a lungful of smoke. He coughs and hacks for a few moments until he slides the charred remains of the paper aside and slouches. Damn it, at least it made the desk creak a bit. Irika steps up for a closer look. Gravity seals? Pretty universally useful. A good choice for a second seal to master. Naruto nods and sighs, pushing his book and practice scroll aside. With a quick hand as in, he produces a single clone to sit beside him and work on that while he focuses on the class. Sakura just gapes at him. Wait, I thought you couldn't make CLO dash. She freezes as the clone picks up the brush and begins another attempt at the gravity seal. Is that clone real? Naruto peels his eyes from his notebook and stares at Sakura for a moment before he manages to recognize her question. Oh, all right. Yeah, I was taught the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu recently. Turns out I could never learn to make normal clones because I have too much chakra to control it that well and use any jinjutsu. Sasuke narrows a glare his way. And who the hell did you learn it from? All right, quiet everyone. Irika waves a stack of papers at the class. Naruto has no obligations to tell anyone where he learned that jutsu. Anyway, for now, we'll be focusing on the newest part of our curriculum. I need each of you to come up as I call your names and take one of these sheets, then channel your chakra through it. How the paper reacts will tell us what elemental natures each of you have. Better yet, this batch was treated in a way that now allows it to clearly display secondary elements as well. So we won't just be getting your main elements out of this. Most people have proficiencies in one with a slight alignment for another, and we'll be able to see the secondary elements and how strong those proficiencies are based on how the paper reacts. As studious as he is, he doesn't need a list to call names from. Aburame Shino. The white-cloaked young man steps to the front of the class in silence. A quick tap of the sheet offered to him resulted in it crumpling and folding into jagged edges, then going rigid and shattering, the falling pieces crumbling further. Interesting. My clan rarely resorts to using elements, so we never developed any genetic proficiency in any. I couldn't be certain of what to suspect, but this is a fairly unique response. The combination of lightning and earth will provide many challenging possibilities. Certainly so. Irika nods and pinches at his chin for a moment while losing himself in thought. It shouldn't be difficult to find anyone to teach you these two. Earth is the most common element, and although lightning is less common, we have the third most of them compared to Kumogakure and Kirigakure. Shino nods and turns to return to his seat, while Irika calls up the next student. Akamichi Chuji. The young man grumbles as he sets his bag of chips down and stumbles to the front of the class. You know, his clan kids are just going to have pretty obvious elements. It's hereditary. Most people in my clan are earth users. He takes the paper and watches it crumble to dust, but the ash-like pale dust lights up and burns away. He raises an eyebrow and grins. But that's interesting. Well, that's not too surprising. Irika chuckles softly. That's the second most common element in this village to begin with. Earth is only more common because it's the most common element in the world in general. Just try not to learn any fire jutsu in closed spaces or without supervision. He waves the Akamichi back to his seat and checks his list again. Haruno Sakura. The pinkette perks up and pushes herself from her seat to race down the stairs, but Ino calls out to her. Hey, maybe you'll get wind and fire. That'd explain all the hot air filling up that balloon of a forehead. She stumbles and trips for a moment on the stairs, barely managing to catch herself and glare back at her former best friend. Kinnet Pig, you're probably going to end up with earth and water for all the mud you're wallowing in. She grunts and stomps the rest of the way down, grabbing a sheet from Irika and nearly crushing it in her grasp. It then proceeds to powderize and soak into a mushy pulp that splatters onto the floor. She stares down at the mush at her feet as silence falls throughout the room, until Kiba has to cut in. So, does that make Sakura the mud Ino's been rolling in? His perverse grin is accompanied by a cacophony of laughter throughout the room, even Hinata and Shikamaru becoming intoxicated by it and failing to stifle their own quiet giggling and chuckling. Sakura's face burns beet red, turning to face them all with a glare. Oh, hell no. I don't swing that way. She freezes and stares as Ino remains eerily quiet and reserved, a faint blush across her face as she avoids eye contact. Sakura stammers for a moment, but sighs and groans, returning to her seat in silence and slamming her forehead into the desk. Irika sighs and rubs the back of his neck. Well, that combination's probably one of the best for you. You already have great control, and these two are best for mastering fine chakra control for Jinjutsu and medical jutsu. He huffs and waits a moment for the class to calm down for a moment before returning to the testing order. Hyuga Hinata. Hinata scrambles out of her seat, still having a slight anxiety spike over having lost her composure and laughed at Sakura's expense. Her timid tiptoeing down the stairs only manages to prolong her anxiety as all eyes fall upon her. By the time she reaches Irika, she can feel their combined gaze drilling into her back. She barely manages to reach out and take the paper, only to yelp as it's cut clean in two, then dampens and lands beside Sakura's mush pile with a gentle splat. Oh! She turns her gaze up to Irika, who grins and crosses his arms. Congratulations, Hinata. You have the rarest element in the world. Even Suna can't manage to produce many natural wind users, and it may be potentially one of the best elements for your clan. Paired with water, you'll be able to refine your flow and accuracy of your techniques even further. Hinata stumbles back as she struggles to process the good fortune that's fallen into her lap. I have that much potential? That's great, Hinata. Her attention is drawn to the loudmouth blonde in the stands, whose clone has even stopped training his Fuinjutsu to write up a banner saying congratulations across a good length of one of his practice scrolls. You're going to be awesome. He pauses and side-eyes his clone. Did you just, whatever, this is worth that much paper and more. Couldn't you have written that better, though? It's sloppy. Boy, I had about 3 seconds to write this up. Let's see you do better. Silence falls as everyone's attentions are drawn to the young man bickering with himself. You could have done that with half the paper and still made bolder strokes. There's too much of a gap between each hiragana. I said I was rushing. Besides, my faults are yours too. Bullshit, I made a faulty clone. Faulty clone of a tyrannical dumbass. The original Naruto stares blankly at him before pulling a practice kunai from his pouch and swinging it down. The clone only has half a second to beg for mercy before he's popped into a cloud of smoke and promptly replaced. He stares down the new one. Be sure to do better than the last one. He finally looks away from his clone and around the room, finding all eyes on him, some annoyed, some amused, others just confused. He chuckles nervously and scratches the back of his head. Sorry, my clones get mouthy. I think it's because they're temporary and have no survival instinct. Shikamaru raises a brow at that. That's even dark for me. Ino gives Shika her death glare. Did you just dash? All right, settle down, everyone. Irika sighs, rubs his temples. Of course Naruto would find a way to turn something so impressive into something annoying. It did provide Hinata with a good distraction so she could return to her seat in peace, though. All right, Inuzuka Kiba. About time. He chuckles and saunters to the front of the class with his hands in his hoodie pockets and Akamaru half asleep atop his head. Mind if we test Akamaru while we're at it? He can channel chakra, so he should be able to. Oh, Irika pauses and pinches his chin again. Interesting. All right, I've got a few extra sheets. He hands one to Kiba first, who grins as it crumbles and burns. Interesting. Iruka kneels to inspect the remains. Although your elements are the same as Chuji's, your proficiencies are more balanced between the two. The paper didn't crumble as finely as Chuji's did, and the flames were hotter. I'd say the ratios come down to around 3-1 for Chuji and 3-2 for you. That's so? Huh. Well, I'm sure I can work with it. He peeks up to Akamaru and holds a second sheet to the silent pup. He lets off a cheerful yap before biting the paper and watching it fold and crinkle. And looks like you're lightning, bud. Hell yeah. A dash. He stares for a moment as Akamaru takes a bite out of the paper and mumbles something in his clan's canine language. And apparently this paper is surprisingly sweet. Huh. Snorts and laughter break out throughout the room as Kiba sighs and walks back to his seat. Shikamaru Nara, the laziest ninja in the village, save for maybe Izumo and Kotetsu, aka the gatekeepers, makes his way to the front of the class, somehow even slower than the anxiety-stricken Hyuga. He picks up the paper and watches as random patches of it either burn or become damp, resulting in the two snuffing each other out after a few seconds, leaving a piece of water-warped dry paper with charred patches surrounding small holes burnt through. So I inherited my mom's water, huh? Weird. I never took after her much. Guess this is something she'll be proud of. Troublesome. He sighs and walks off with the paper as evidence. She's probably going to slave drive me into learning a water jutsu by graduation now. Irika chuckles nervously. Okay then. Great. Now Yoshino's going to be on my ass too if I don't start pushing him more in class. He clears his throat and calls the next student down. Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke squeezes his way out from between the fangirls flanking him and makes his way to the front of the class with annoyance etched into every crease in his face. Isn't this a waste of time? My whole clan specialized in fire. That paper's just gonna burst into flames. He grabs it and freezes as the paper first folds and crumples into the most jagged patterns yet, then bursts into flames and scatters ash across the front of the class. What? Irika inspects the resulting ash. Well, you clearly still have a strong affinity for fire, but it appears your primary element is actually lightning. You'll probably still learn fire jutsu as easily as the rest of your clan did, but lightning should still be your specialty. Right. Sasuke sighs and shoves his hands buried in his pockets on the way back to his seat, glaring into empty space all the way. Okay then. Irika grins up into the stands. Uzumaki Naruto. Hell yeah. Naruto, of course, lacks the patience to walk, instead leaping over his desk and clean over everyone's heads, landing before his favorite teacher and grabbing the paper with enthusiasm only someone as hyperactive as himself could muster. In his endless excitement, he pumps the paper full of far too much chakra, causing it to be cut to ribbons, and even cut his hand a bit in the process. Then the remaining pieces crack and crumble. Silence falls as everyone takes a moment to let whatever just happened sink in. Well, Irika chuckles and leans down to congratulate his adoptive little brother. Congratulations, Naruto. You're a natural wind user, and it seems you have a decent secondary affinity for Earth too. After a few moments of registering what just happened, Naruto cheers and leaps nearly to the ceiling. Hell yeah. You hear that, Hinata-chan? I got wind too. We're both going to be awesome. For now, all anyone can manage to do is gawk at the young blonde. In the span of a month, he'd gone from dead last and nobody to being a trap master, learning Fuinjutsu, and now having wind chakra up his sleeve. Even Kiba, who dropped into dead last among their group with Naruto's advancements, was starting to catch up and had 3 elements at his disposal. This was the last spark most of them needed under their asses to realize they all had to kick it into high gear to not be humiliated by falling behind these two. Hinata, on the other hand, is just watching her crush with the widest smile she could remember ever having plastered on her face. She's never seen him so happy, and now she knows for certain that he not only knows she exists, but really cares. Hey, what about me? Ino bolts up from her seat. I need my test yet. Irika sighs and weighs her down. I didn't forget. Naruto's just ignore him and walk around. He'll be at this for a while. Ino runs down to the front of the class and nearly bowls Naruto over, grabbing her test sheet and raising it to the ceiling. It crumples and folds spastically, then grows damp, breaks away from her grasp, and splats onto her face. So Naruto, the Sandaime, takes a puff from his pipe, breathing out various smoke patterns into the air, altered by his chakra. How's your training going? Kakashi told me you were successful with the Kage Bunshin over the weekend. Quite the addition to your arsenal, I must say. He chuckles softly. And an old favorite of mine, passed on to me by my sensei, the Naidame. Naruto perks up and raises a brow. The Naidame made that? Huh, good to know. But anyway, I'm here for something bigger. Like, big enough that you may want to seal the door. Hiruzen narrows his eyes for a moment, but nods and uses a quick half-hand signed seal and soundproof the room. That's quite the statement, Naruto. What do you have to speak of that's so confidential? He smirks and crosses his arms, left foot propped up on his right knee. Well, you might want to know that the QB says you're one of the few people to earn his respect without making him want to eat you. Chapter 5. Guardians. Sarutobi Hiruzen rubs at the bridge of his nose, then reaches into the top left drawer of his desk, retrieving a small sample of a dried medicinal herb for his pipe. Well, many people wouldn't call it medicinal, but at his age, stress is potentially fatal. In his case, it is medicinal. Should have done something to that furry orange bastard's tongue before Minato sealed him. So how long have you known then? Naruto leans back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. 3 days now? It was the night Kakashi-sensei taught me the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. He rolls his eyes. Apparently, he saw chakra exhaustion as a good way to put me under and get my attention. The old monkey lights his pipe with a quick application of fire chakra and takes a puff. Sound about right. That seal is a fine piece of work, the likes of which even my best student couldn't reproduce, but there's still notable flaws. The blonde scratches his head. Yeah, I tried studying it with a clone, but what little sealing knowledge I have so far isn't half as much as I need to understand even the smallest pieces of this seal. So what weaknesses do you know then? Well, let's see. He blows out a ring as smoke, reshaping it into an Uzumaki clan spiral with pure chakra control. Running out of your own chakra and still attempting to use more will draw from the fox's chakra as a backup source. Doing so might impair your judgment, as his will seeps into your mind. Secondly, heightened states of emotion can draw upon it, namely rage, hate, potentially sorrow, or even fear. That's all a side effect of the seal's function to leak bits of its chakra into your system at a constant rate to help you acclimate to it. Naruto pulls a notebook from his pocket and jots down a few things. Okay, so what about not telling me for so long? He gives the elderly leader a half-lidded, half-hearted glare. Hiruzen falls silent for a few moments, then sighs and hangs his head. I may be Hokage, but my power is not absolute. The fact of what makes you a prime target for our enemies should news escape the village. If IWA especially found out, you would have been dead within a few weeks. Besides that, I decided it would be best for you to grow up knowing you had a choice to become a ninja, rather than feeling it's your duty as a Jinchuriki. So, to maintain as much normalcy as possible, I forbade anyone to speak of your condition. He grumbles. Sadly, news spread too quickly before I could make that decree, and many parents in the village were already privy to your status. Well, that explains a lot. Naruto puts his book away and crosses his arms. God damn it, Gigi. You really screwed the pooch on that one. He groans and nods, burying his wrinkled face in her rough, worn hands. That I did, Naruto. It's quite possible one of the worst kept secrets in the village. Outside it, news is yet to spread, but inside. Naruto snorts. I may as well wear a name tag saying, "Hello, I am the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Please stab me." He closes his eyes and lets it all sink in. Well, now that I'm in on that secret, I just have one last thing to ask you. The Hokage peeks up and props his chin on folded hands. Can I have express permission to test non-lethal versions of my traps on anyone who's treated me like shit or overcharged me for it? A sly grin stretches across the Kage's sagging face. I'll let the Umbu know not to step in. Oh, and now that we're on to lighter topics, he pulls a cross from his desk and tosses it. That contains 3 things for you. The next volume on sealing, Yoko's Ninkin license, and the directions for applying the seal that identifies her as one. Naruto looks through the scroll for a moment, then smiles and nods. I'll get right on it then. Thanks, Gigi. He rushes out of the room and nearly jumped down the entire flight of stairs, leaving Hiruzen behind seemingly alone. You may have to speak to him sooner than you'd planned. A sigh comes from behind him with no discernible source, until an old white-haired sage in a red vest fades into view. Maybe, but the real me's still 2 countries north in Gohangakure, weeding out that snake. He's got a couple leads to look into out east, and likely to be there for a few months soon, probably until August. He chuckles a bit. So hey, when the runt passes and gets a C rank, try and send him out that way. Hiruzen nods. I certainly will, if the chance arises. For now, I believe you're almost out of chakra. Best release yourself so you have enough left to get everything you just heard and said to the original. Yeah, I'm going. Kajalater, sensei. A quick pop and a puff of smoke alerts him to the disappearance of Jiraiya clone. For now, the old Kage has much to think about. The following weekend was pure mayhem. 10 different grocers discovered that their produce had been rigged with small explosives, splattering their halls and walls with various impromptu smoothies. Any attempts to disarm them was met with a new uniform that would match their latest fruity decor. A few ninja tool and weapon stores would find their doors, walls, and displays all plastered with posters advertising a sale over at Higurashi Outfitters. Of course, the owners who discovered the posters immediately tried to remove them, but they were glued down rather securely. Upon attempting to use a kunai or other sharp tools to remove them, a foul-smelling gas and powder mixture would release from beneath each poster. All of those stores became too rancid for any customers to consider, and the offer of Higurashi sale was too good to pass up. A certain bun-haired kunoichi was left wondering if she should track down this prankster and pay them for their patronage. After Tintin had done just that, and even thrown in a free set of basic tools and weapons, Naruto knew just where to take this cash. No, not at Chiraku's, as he had a much more entertaining meal in mind. A few bills in some guards' pockets, and the next day, some of Konoha's prisoners in the local station built into the cliffside north of the monument would find their meals to have an odd aftertaste, followed soon after by a constant itching in their throats and eventual diarrhea. It was such an odd coincidence that all of them happened to be former academy teachers. And for his last trick, he decided to get a leg up on the worst group at the academy, as well as on a certain raven-haired prick's good side. The entire OSFC, official Sasuke fan club, received letters informing them that a generous benefactor had discovered a secret training ground that the Uchiha would be using the next day. It contained a small waterfall and stream through some relatively rocky terrain, perfect for training to handle odd-angled attacks and uneven terrain. In this case, he said the Uchiha would be testing his ability to maintain a fire jutsu against water and overpower it. Just the kind of hype that the fangirls would buy into. When they arrived, they were treated to the sight of a shirtless Sasuke meditating beneath the waterfall. They all watched from afar for a few moments, and as soon as Naruto was certain they were all gathered, his clone changed its hinge from a shirtless Sasuke to a Speedo-wearing, oily, fat version of Elder Hamura. This clone proceeded to dance for the girls with his tongue rolling out as they all took off, screaming and gagging. What none of the fangirls had realized was he had clones in the trees taking photos of every moment of their horrified expressions and desperate attempts to escape, which were handed off to Sasuke as payment. He cherished them for years. There were two particular girls out of the victims of that prank that began to wonder just how she had fallen for it. One of them was seated on a bench just outside her favorite dango shop. She always had quite the sweet tooth, but it's been ages since she's indulged in her pursuit of a perfect body. Right now, she just needed comfort food to help her think over her latest plight. Sakura knew that she had clearly been fooled by not one, but two henges, and a lie that if she'd stopped thinking about Sasuke for 2 seconds, she would have noticed immediately. What she received for her failure was humiliation and nightmares of that whole event for the weeks since. She knew well enough that it was Naruto's fault, as he was the only prankster with that sort of talent and devotion to the art in the entire village. But how had Naruto, of all people, been able to pull the wool over her eyes? She already knew the answer. She was weak. She'd become weaker than him, less focused than him, and her prospects as Kunoichi were dimming fast from her own perspective. She bit the last piece of dango off her stick, throwing it across the street and embedding the wooden skewer into the opposing fence. Not bad, kid. Sakura nearly jumps out of her introspective stupor as she raises her gaze to a woman seated just a few feet to her left. Her attire was appalling, in her opinion. The trench coat was respectable enough, but the fact she had apparently nothing but a mesh shirt beneath it, and not so much as a sports bra, let alone any bra, made it almost embarrassing to be seated by her. But her headband stood out well enough to be certain of the woman's superiority. She bites a piece of dango off her own serving and proceeds to throw it into the fence as well, almost completing a leaf insignia made of dango sticks. For a moment, Sakura had to wonder just how she was able to eat enough dango to make that, but still keep her admittedly impressive figure. Something's at you pissed off. Good. Let that fire in your belly push you to improve. Sakura pauses for a moment, but sighs and rubs at her left temple. I don't even know where to start. I come from a civilian family. I can't get any clan training, and I barely even recognize my own strengths. I'm smart, but my instincts are terrible, and I don't know a single jutsu outside the Academy 3. The purple-haired Kunoichi leans back against the wood paneling on the store's front and crosses her arms behind her head. Well, that's not giving me much to go off of, Brad. Can't excel if you can't recognize your own skills, and just pointing out weaknesses makes you sound like a whiny bitch. Hey, if you've got the drive to complain about that, try to change my mind. Once again, Sakura is dumbstruck. She falls silent and takes a few moments to think over everything she remembers Irika-sensei saying about her. Well, my chakra control is apparently the best in the class, and I'm a balanced water and earth chakra user, though I haven't trained in either. Well, that's plenty to start with. Anko grins and finishes her last bit of dango, finishing the center of the spiral on her makeshift Konoha symbol with its stick. You're lucky you found me in a good mood, kid. I'm best friends with someone who's great with Jinjutsu, and she even happens to have a water affinity. She stands and stretches, nearly exposing her ample assets in the process, but somehow her coat manages to keep her legally decent. Turns out, that's actually part of a chakra control exercise she uses to keep her coat attached to her chest at all times. She'll find you. Kind of impossible to miss that hair. Just keep an eye out for red eyes, and you won't miss her either. Anko walks off with her usual sadistic smile. I'm sure we'll meet again, Pinky. Kick some ass out there. Prove Kunoichi can kick just as much ass as the best of the boys. Sakura could only watch in shock as she left, but soon her eyes narrowed and her will became steel. A fire was lit in her heart that boiled her water chakra. Her inner self was already on a verbal, self-aggrandizing tirade of epic proportions. Ino, on the other hand, was already hard at work. Her nose was buried deep in a neuropsychology textbook she'd taken from her father's study, agonizingly memorizing every detail she could. Beside her was another scroll on lightning chakra application theories. She didn't hear her father enter, looking for the book and scroll she had taken without permission. She didn't hear him leave either, with a smile on his face as he considered the potential his daughter has just stumbled upon. For once, her impulsiveness paid off, and he couldn't bring himself to berate her for seeking to better herself, especially in such a surprising manner as this. For some time, he had been worried about her career as a kunoichi. Now he felt he had little to fear at all, besides whatever monstrous jutsu she would develop. Shikamaru sat in a meditative state on his back porch, a leaf in his hand. Any civilians to see him would just consider it his usual laziness, but Shikaku and Yoshinonara know better. Beside him were scrolls on both fire and water chakra theory, so neither of them could be certain which element he was attempting to influence the leaf with. Would it burn to ashes in his hand, or saturate with dew and drip? There was nothing thus far but neither of them expected any progress very soon. Elemental composition training is always a taxing process. What neither of them knew was that he was currently sitting on the evidence of a success. One burnt leaf and one wet leaf now stuck to his ass, while he used this opportunity to nap. Shikaku suspected it, but he loved the brilliance too much to spoil it. The other recognized genius of the class was finding himself a bit hard of breathing. He takes a moment to test his hands, flexing them and finding them to feel the muscles beneath in motion. With it, he felt his newest hive respond with a gentle buzzing. Settle down. I know, you're not yet acclimated to your new diets. Rest assured, you will thrive with it. He clenches his fist and feels a current run through his arm. As will I. Off to Shino's left, Shibi Aburame takes notes of the chakra reactions his own Kikaichu are reporting. Fascinating. With a few hundred short-lived generations, maybe as little as a year, you may even produce an entire new subspecies. The Hyuga heiress was similarly exhausted. Small cuts and chakra burns littered her hands, and the rest of her body was lightly bruised and sore in many places. But she stood over her downed foe with a confidence she could only recall ever feeling in the moment Naruto praised her for their shared wind affinity. It was this reason that she chose to experiment with this element first, but it did not come easily. And yet, the fruits of her labor now kneel before her. A Hyuga assigned by her father as her sparring partner for the day, holding a cut on his calf. He'd never seen this attack coming. It wasn't the Jukin. Their clan style was far more direct, but she had ducked under a strike toward her right shoulder, around his left, spun on her toes mid-fall, and swung a strike at his calf partially composed of wind chakra. And her father had witnessed it all with his Byakugan. The veins in his face twitched as he took in the fine details, and although he did not smile, the faintest of twitches in his lips was enough for Hinata to see not only his surprise, but pride. Sasuke's eyes burned with an all-too-familiar pride and passion. If lightning was the element he'd been handed, then he would strike like lightning itself, while the iron is still hot. If he could excel so much with fire when it was his secondary element, then he would find his grasp on lightning by the time he graduated. It was slow going so far. His eyes and hands burned. When he had finally gotten an electrical charge through his leaf, lighting its veins, he had overcharged it and nearly blinded himself. When the spots had cleared, he burned through the entire pile of leaves he'd collected for his training in just over an hour. Once again, his skills as a ninjutsu prodigy were proven unabashedly true. All that was left was to scour his clan's library for his first lightning jutsu. Chusa Akimichi was beaming at his son across the dinner table. His appetite had been worked to an all-time high, tearing through the meal with a ravenous fervor the likes of which he hadn't seen in years. But he couldn't blame the boy at all, especially with the results they achieved. Earth was a very natural element for their family, but he was taking to it quite early. Of course, the reason for that was partly due to an odd old convention of Konoha. The high concentration of fire-aligned shinobi in this village led to efforts to delay elemental training until students were more mature, as it tended to result in frequent fires across town, until they removed it from the academy curriculum. Now, only those that passed the academy and were awarded their headbands were usually taught to wield their elements at such an age, unless their clans or a tutor or sorts aided them. Of course, Chuji only received the best from Chuza. If his son had the drive to learn something, he would damn well teach him. The trench dug through their backyard was testament enough to the results and his son's motivation. Chapter 6. Long awaited.